Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about The Boys, the fifth and final season. This came out in April of 2026, and I'm just now talking about it because I've been busy. And yeah, The Boys. The Boys in general is an amazing comic book streaming show. And it took the world by storm, similar to that of The Walking Dead over a decade ago. To where that's all people could talk about was the boys and how chaotic it was and stuff. A superhero show that showed it kind of flipped the script on what superhero shows should be about. And instead of superheroes being the good people, they're the bad people and everything. And with that came two spin-offs, Diabolical, an animated series that lasted for one season, Gen V that lasted for two seasons, and now Vault Rising that's about to come out either later this year or next year. And so when it comes to Boys, it is one of my favorite shows, but it's not perfect. Season 1 and 2 are my all-time favorites, and I own those on DVD only. Season 3 is when it started to falter a little bit. Season 3, in my opinion, is just gross. Really, really gross. Too much butt play, too much just gross adult humor. And I thought it was gonna be a huge blowout type season. Butcher now has powers similar to that of Homelander. They're gonna go at it. You have Soldier Boy showing up, played by Jensen Ackles, who I'm a fan of. Then you have his team, who I thought was his original team, but apparently that's his second team. And Laurie Holder was gonna be in it. I just thought it was going to be this big, epic thing. And for the most part, half of it was and everything, but some of it was very disappointing. Laurie Holder was barely in it. Jensen Ackles was in it, but Butcher finally had what he wanted. But then he's going to go and portray Soldier Boy to save Ryan and stuff. And that was truly just the downfall of this series. It really, really, really was. And he had what he was going to have to get rid of Homelander, but, compassion came over him. Now, when it comes to that of The Boys, it is loosely based off the comic. The comic is insane and completely different than the show. And there's lots of stuff that's been changed, like certain people being related to other people. What is it? Soldier Boy, I forget. He's the father of somebody, but he's not the father of Homelander, I don't think. And, they've gender bent some people, they've race bent some people, and they made the show so much better than that of the comic, in my opinion. But then came season 4, and season 4 just felt like a train wreck. It just didn't feel good, in my opinion. They started to delve way too much into politics. There were storylines going all around that didn't make no kind of sense. And I don't know, it was just a huge whimper. What was once a great show just started to fall by the wayside and everything. The fights weren't that impressive. People were just randomly either dying or just popping in and then popping out. They was getting rid of good characters and everything. And Homelander just seemed to be just a giant baby, and you really hoping that he would take over in a huge way. But then, I don't know, it's just to me, it's always been Butcher versus Homelander. But then they changed it up to where it's now Annie versus Homelander. I'm all like, why is Annie going up against Homelander, if anything? Like, it should have been Huey versus like A-Train. It should have been like Annie versus the Deep, and then it should have been Butcher versus like, Homelander. But then they changed it up and everything. And to me, that whole plot line just never really made no sense. Huey left to go do political stuff, then found out that the lady he's been working for is the head popper and everything. And she's related to that one dude from season 1 of like Vault, and I don't know, man. It's just, and then there was that whole Frenchie storyline with that guy, and I'm just like, where is all this coming from? And since when has Frenchie been like bisexual and everything? It's like they was just throwing more and more stuff in the plate, but they was just mixing it around and had like no real ingredients to like cook up what they wanted to cook up. So, of course, well, many people not liking that season. The 5th season was going to kind of suffer because of that. Now, Eric Kripke literally said that he's always planned for 5 seasons and that's it. Whether or not that's the truth, I have no idea. But I guess he didn't want to repeat what happened on Supernatural, letting it go on for way too long, for up to like 11 seasons, retconning stuff, ruining stuff that pissed off the fans. Now, I personally never seen Supernatural, so I don't know what the debacle is about that and why it got ruined, but I've heard many people talk about it and stuff. And so it was smart to try to end on like a high note. Problem is that season 4 really diminished like the show, and a little bit of season 3, to be honest. And so because of that, Amazon just basically said, screw it, and we're gonna slash your budget for season 5. That was a huge mistake, because this is a superhero show with superpowers and everything. You need a budget. On top of all that, Gen V, which season 1 in my opinion is very, very, very good and stuff. Season 2 was just crap. Season 2 act like they didn't even know what the heck it wanted to be. And season 2, you can tell by like the writing in season 2 and the boys writing in like season 4 that Eric Kripke pretty much just gave up at that time. Like, it was just at the point to where he saw his like ship like sinking and didn't know how to make it afloat. We were always told that, it was supposed to be these big crossovers and stuff, and the people from the boys did cross over in Gen V, just not the way people really expected. Then when people in Gen V crossed over into the boys, it really was lackluster and not what people expected. But of course, Gen V got canceled, and so with the boys coming to an end, they had one more trick up their sleeve, and that's Vault Rising. And so this season, the 5th season, it planted the seeds for what to expect in Vault Rising, which is smart because, like, you do want to get characters kind of familiar with certain people and what's going to happen and stuff like that. You're going to have a spinoff. The problem is, and I've seen a lot of people complain and said that Jensen Ackles had way too much screen time in season 5, and season 5 was nothing more but a huge setup for Vault Rising, and it just took over the entire season. Did y'all even watch season 5 who are saying that? Okay, that one episode that had like the flashbacks and stuff and had like Soldier Boy and Homelander looking for Compound V1 and everything, and like Homelander actually injects it into him and finally gets like V1, and you had the flashbacks of like Bombside and like, whatever that Asian lady name was and stuff like that. Skip that episode. Like, just take that out your mind for a second. Everything else in this season, every other episode Jensen Ackles appeared in, he's had little screen time. Very, very little screen time. So he didn't take up the entire season. It's just the bombastic stuff he says sticks in people's head and makes it memorable to the point where you think he's in the season a whole lot more than what he really is. But his runtime is very short. Plus, he wasn't even in the final episode and stuff because he got refrozen and stuff. So he really wasn't in the season that long. He didn't ruin the season like people are saying he did. It's just people need somebody to blame. If you want to blame anybody, you got to blame Amazon for cutting the budget. And you got to put some of the blame on Eric Kripke for rushing the heck out of this season. And this was a very rushed season. Like, the events that ended in season 4, you thought was going to be so huge coming into season 5. But then once you watch Gen V, you know that those two bad kids turned good in Gen V. So what kind of impact were they going to have on season 5 of The Boys? Then, like, when the boys got captured and got put in those, like, internment camps, oh, I'm so sorry, detention centers and everything, you know, that are based off of immigration, like detention centers and everything. Like, you know, we assumed that, you know, the majority of the season was going to be them in there seeing how they was going to escape and, you know, like all kind of other crap, you know what I'm saying? And how would the other members going to bust them out? That all accommodated in one episode and very, very quick in just a couple of minutes and everything. And it's just kind of like, because they did a time jump. This is what shows always do when, like, it ends on something big, but then they don't want to resolve it. So they do a time jump and then they quickly get them out. I suspect Daredevil Born Again season 3 is gonna do a time jump because they're gonna all like, well, we don't want to see Matt Murdock in jail and everything. Let's just do a time jump. Well, then don't put him in jail. And so with this season, it's funny because it's almost like the writers and creators collaborated with Daredevil Born Again when it came to, like, you know, the political aspects of, like, you know, what's going on in the real world. Is like, okay, look, we'll take some of it and y'all take the rest and everything and show it on your show so we both won't seem very similar. And when it comes to the political stuff of this show that's going on in the real world politics, it is crazy how they predicted the future and everything. Because this show was written before the 2024 election and stuff. And so the fact that they predicted the future with the statue, with the Jesus reference, with the, like, you know, religious aspect of it, turning a blind eye for their, like, agenda and everything, it is crazy how spot on they were. And of course, a lot of people got offended by that and everything, talking about, oh, you're just mocking us and blah, 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 blah. But they were spot on. And in terms of mockery, they do mock both sides of the aisle and everything. But they've been doing it since season 1. It's just y'all just never picked up on it. Like, if you go back to season 1, they literally been making fun of politics and current events of politics ever since. It's just y'all just never picked up on it and stuff. Now, of course, in season 4, they really, really, really went there. Because I guess they figured, hey, if you're not picking up on this, then we're going to, like, make it so y'all can see exactly what we're talking about and stuff. And, you know, and, so with real world events, with the rushing of the script, with the slash budget, with a disappointing appearance by the Gen V people, I could not believe what they did with the Gen V people this season. And yes, I know it's called The Boys, not Gen V. But when you have a show that's set in the same universe and they have crossed over, and the events of one show cumulate to the events of the other show, you need to show them a bit more, because the whole virus thing that started in Gen V. And then of course, the boys getting kidnapped by some Gen V people, that happened in The Boys and stuff. But the virus was the main focal point of this season. And not only that, but what they did to Mari was insane. They literally set that woman up to be one of the most powerful Supes ever. Set her up to take on Homelander and everything. And then they do absolutely nothing with her. Because once again, the budget is slashed. And let's be honest and everything. With the way the toxic people are on YouTube and stuff, and how much they complain, and how much people complain about the politics of this show, and the toxic people on YouTube are very similar to the toxic people in politics and everything, there was no way they was gonna have a black savior. Not only that, but it's not her show. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's been Butcher versus Homelander since day one, and that's really what it should have came down to, and it was. But Mari could have weakened him, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, she could have fought in, like, the battle and everything. I mean, why would she set up to literally take on Homelander in Gen V if they wasn't gonna use it? It's almost like the writers of both shows just didn't pay attention to either shows and just said, screw it. Then, of course, there is, like, the retconning and stuff. And stuff that just kind of got dropped. Like the whole Butcher and his tentacles and how it seemed to control his mind. And how the boys didn't want to work with Butcher no more. But now all of a sudden he's back to being a leader and the tentacles no longer control him. And they're no longer killing him. So it's just kind of like, how you going to retcon that from like your previous season? Then there is the whole V1 thing. That has got completely retconned and stuff. I don't remember it giving people immortality. Like, I don't. I mean, Stormfront, she died she was dying at the end of season 2, but then she died at the beginning of season 3, and she has V1. So how the heck was she able to get blasted by Ryan to the point of dying and everything, and then took her own life when she was on the ventilator if she has immortality and stuff? Like, I don't get that. And I know there's a line from, what's his name? Soulja Boy talking about something. Somebody talking about, I can't pierce your skin, but I can do something or something like that. Meaning that, yeah, they can still get hurt or whatever, but we know for a fact they can't. And the way to take them out, like, the people who have V1 is basically hitting them with a nuclear blast and everything. I don't know, that just felt like a cop-out and everything. Like, it just really did. And so when it comes to this season, people also assume Homelander would go berserk and just start killing people he's just pissed off left and right and go scorch earth. There's even this picture from the promotional art of him, like, hovering above earth and everything. And then, of course, there's, like, that image, another promotional art of, like, the White House and a bunch of Supes there, because everybody assumed it was going to be a huge battle and everything. And people will be going scorch earth and Supes versus Supes, similar to how it was in the comic. But that's all it was, a picture of reference and everything. Like, it never happened. So why tease people like that? I mean, they already steered clear of the comics. So why, like, tease people with that imagery and stuff? Like that don't make no sense. But of course they couldn't do it because their budget got slashed and everything. And because the budget got slashed, I can give like, a pass to some of the, like pretty much a good chunk of what happened this season, because it's not really their fault. Amazon just did not believe in them no more. Amazon simply just no longer cared. And Amazon just cared more about like Vault Rising and stuff. And that really shows you just how much Amazon just sucks. You know what I'm saying? To the point where they can't even give a satisfying finale, because Eric Kripke literally said it was going to be epic. And we're finally going to come to the conclusion of all this climax and all this and that. But he spoke too soon because he didn't know Amazon was going to pull like, the stank card and everything. But, it's Jeff Bezos, so what do you expect? You know what I'm saying? He ain't nothing but a punk anyway. And so, not only that, but characters this season didn't feel the way they felt in the past. Like, take Kimiko, for example. Everybody knows Kimiko's personality. Like, she's rigid, she's friendly, not overly too friendly. She's quiet because she's a mute because she refuses to talk. And she kind of has a little bit of like, some flavor to her, like a little gangsterist to her. Like, when she likes, I think she beat somebody up and stole all their jewelry and everything. It shows that she has a fashionable side of like being stylish and everything. But for the most part, she's like, kind of grumpy a little bit and stuff like that. And we have seen a little bit more of a goofier side of her in the 4th season when she hallucinated and had that huge dance number. Why exactly she had that, I have no idea. But now comes season 5 and she can talk. And when she talks, her personality is just completely different and everything. She's bubbly, she's gleeful, she's constantly smiling and everything. She's making jokes. She didn't even make really jokes when she was doing sign language and stuff. Sign language. And so she wasn't even really being silly or making jokes back then. It was just she would be sarcastic, but in a blunt FU kind of way, you know what I'm saying? But now she's super goofy and silly and smiley, and it's just like, who the heck is this woman? She is not the same Kimiko that we've seen for 4 seasons and stuff. Not to mention that a geisha woman from like the 60s or whatever, that one Soup who's in that retirement home, she literally said, I learned English by watching like your show and this and that. But that don't make no sense. And that has to be a retcon because of how we knew Kimiko grew up and everything. Because I'm pretty sure, like, she didn't watch that show growing up because when she was a kid, and then her and her brother come to America and they got separated, and then she got put in that detention center or something like that, that sex trafficking type thing or human trafficking type thing. Not only that, but if she's from Japan and like has pretty much never spoken since she's been like a child, why is her English not only so good, but she has an American accent? Shouldn't she have a Japanese accent and everything? Now, I know the actress is Japanese, but has a very English American sounding accent. And I do know a lot of Asian people, they hate using a stereotypical Asian voice, but in terms of a story and making it feel believable, if your character is from another country and never really spoke English before and never spoke it good, you would assume they would have an accent to further the believability of that storyline in that make-believe world. You know what I'm saying? I mean, look at the Karate Kid. Pat Maria had an English sounding accent, you know what I'm saying? An American English sounding accent. But for that movie, his character was from Japan and came on over here and couldn't speak English that well. And so he spoke in a very stereotypical kind of way for the believability of that story. Not to mention, Annie was barely in this season. And Annie is somebody they've been building up since season one, and so much they've been having her wanting to take on Homelander and oppose him and everything, you know? Because they're both sides of the political aisle. One is left, one is right. And like, you know, so you thought these two would come head to head, but I don't even think they interacted at all this season. Now, one reason why the actress was barely in this season is because I think she said she's suffering from Graves' disease or whatever it's called. And so it took a toll on like how many episodes she could be in. And so because of that, they pretty much just had her interact with the boys, but just kind of be there and smoking from a vape stick, which is something I don't think we've ever seen her do before. And then not only that, but then they show like, you know, her interacting with her family. And that was so cool to have the voice actor who voiced Superman in the animated series play her father. And she feels the abandonment from him because he went off, left because he couldn't handle her having powers, and he started having a new family who don't have powers, and they're forced to live in this like dystopia that Homelander has created and stuff. And it's the typical story we've seen so many times, especially in X2. Oh, the little brother doesn't like the idea his sibling has powers, so he calls the police. The police shows up. And instead of being a big battle and everything, there's like not. Because they're able to talk their way out of it and stuff. And it was just kind of like a disappointing like storyline and everything that really didn't lead to like nowhere, because we didn't see the humans, the non-soups and everything revolt against Vought and Homelander. The two Gen V people they brought in, like, they do absolutely positively nothing. Apparently, they've been on the run and just hiding and everything since the second season. There's no mention of the other characters. Their powers are amazing and they could have helped out in the fight, but Annie doesn't want them to fight, telling them they're not ready. Even though we know they are ready, they've been trained, and she was recruiting people in their season. But this makes absolutely no sense from what we saw and what was portrayed in Gen V season 2. Huey does basically nothing this season. It's like they had absolutely nothing for him. So he's kind of just there, you know? And like, of course, he does kill like Butcher at the end of this season, like he does in the comics. But it's for somewhat completely similar kind of reasons, but different at the same time. And it just never felt earned. Like, I don't see this version of Huey killing Butcher. And what was so heartbreaking about it is that Butcher literally gave up and Huey still shot him anyways. But I'll get into that a little bit later. Mother's Milk. They literally had nothing for this dude this season. He was the leader last season, but now Butcher's back and he's just there helping out. And not only that, but he keeps taking Butcher's side for a lot of stuff when we know he's extremely pissed off at Butcher and how Butcher does things. He still, I think his name is Gregor, the one dude who used to run Vought. Like, he's pissed because Gregor, I guess, killed his father and everything, and they still have to work with each other. But then Gregor betrays them. And so it's like, he doesn't even get his revenge on that dude. Not to mention, I mean, like, why not? This series is basically over. Why not get revenge on everybody that needs revenging? And because I know they're going to have a Vought Mexican show, which I don't see that happening. I don't. After the reception of this show, what happened with Gen V, them creating their Nazi like, Vault Rising show, and the way the political climate is and toxic guys online, I just don't see that show happening. It's gonna be just like Citadel when they had all those spinoffs that happened in other countries, lasted for one season. And so Mother's Milk never really got no revenge on nobody. He did take out whoever that religious dude name was, but they didn't have no conflict this season. And then he did get revenge on, I think, the dude with the huge penis, because he's always been messing with him. But that's about it. But you can tell they clearly had nothing for him. Frenchie seems to be over all the stuff that like has happened to him in the past seasons, and of course he's back to basically just being the brain, trying to perfect that of like the virus and stuff, loving Kamiko, and just trying to be there for everybody. He's the one who figured out that there's a suit messing with all their minds, and that's why everybody's acting all like aggressive towards each other. He was immune because of how messed up his brain is from drugs over the years. And of course, he is the one with, I think, help from Sister Sage to give Kamiko, what's his name? Soldier Boy's like power and stuff, And then sadly, he made like the ultimate sacrifice. Another WTF moment was Ryan. Like, seriously, they've been setting this dude up to be the next Homelander. He has all his powers. They've been setting him up to turn against Homelander, and the dude barely shows up this season. And now he's in a relationship with Head Popper's daughter and everything. And he's been living alone, like, in another country and stuff. Which, with his powers, yeah, he can swoop in and swoop out and steal food whenever he needs to. So I can understand if he can, like, live on his own. But the simple fact of the matter is like, where the heck is he? This whole series has also revolved around him. Who his father is, who his mother is, who his stepfather is, who his grandfather is. To have him sidelined, is just weird. But then and Butcher, of course, is being selfish and egging him on to see if he can take on Homelander, but knowing he can't. Then he disappears for the rest of the season, only to pop up at the end to take on Homelander along with Butcher, and then tell Butcher, yo, man, I want nothing to do with you and everything. I'm just going to live on my own and blah, 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 blah. And it's just kind of like, how? You don't have powers no more. How are you going to go back to that other country and live off the streets and everything? But then at the very end, we see Mother's Milk has literally taken him in, seemingly, and everything. And it's just like, when have those two ever interacted? And why is he now living with him? Like, none of this crap is ever explained. I was shocked when the actress who plays Queen Maeve did not return. I thought for sure that character would return to help out. But it seems that from what the showrunner says, she's like semi-retired and everything. I didn't even know she was retired from acting. And at this point, I would have just recast her. Now, I do forget this man's name. I think it's Edgar or something like that. I was shocked that he portrayed them. So, like, the last time we saw him in Gen V, he was giving shelter to, like, some of the students there because they escaped, what was going on and everything. And he's still doing that now. Translucent Sun is there. And, of course, his granddaughter, the Head Popper lady's, like, daughter and stuff. And so members of the boys will go there, too, to hide out and stuff like that. But then, like, Vault is, like, looking for Edgar and stuff. And they eventually capture him, only for him to betray them and go back to working for Vault. And I'm just kind of like, seriously, we know he's a bad dude. Y'all redeemed him. Now y'all made him scummy again? Like, I don't get that, A Train. I was expecting a heck of a lot more from A Train. We know he's been working with Huey and Annie since saving her the last season, I believe. He is a person who has come a long way, same as Maeve or whatever her name is. Like, he knows he's done terrible things in the past. And over the season, he still have done horrible things in the past. But people like Mother Milk and Huey and Annie have been trying to like turn him around to the point where he sees that Vought does not have his best interest. Homelander does not have his best interest. And Homelander will literally kill him and everything if Homelander sees fit. And so because of that, he turned. And he's been saving Annie and all them whenever they need saving. But Homelander is getting suspicious and goes after A-Train. And it's a pretty interesting run flight scene that they have until something harpens back to that of season one. A-Train was about to run into like I think a woman or something like that, reminding him of what he did to Huey's girlfriend, which set all this in motion between him and Huey. So he swerved and tripped and everything. And so after giving a speech to like Homelander about like, you know, how he would never follow him again and stuff like that, Homelander just straight up murders this dude. And I was very shocked it came so early in the season. Like I was expecting it to happen more midway through or something like that. Sister Sage, they took the smartest character in the show and made her literally stupid. Literally. Even getting rid of her powers. So Sister Sage has been controlling everything since season 4. Planting seeds in Homelander's head to make him act a certain way and everybody else. Because she has a master plan. But what the heck is that master plan? We know she's not entirely evil because she saved that one guy from like Gen V and everything. And they seem like they had a bit of a relationship in the past. So she's not entirely evil. So come this season, it turns out she wants the virus to happen because she wants to kill all the Supes and everything. Then with the remaining ones that probably live, she wants them to kill like the humans and stuff. To the point where she's going to hide in a bunker, read her book, and then when she comes out, once the virus dissipates and everything, she just wants to be the last person on Earth and read her books. That is her master plan, just to be alone and left alone. And that is like the dumbest thing I've ever seen. She just wants peace and everything. And even tells Ashley, hey, if you help me and everything, you can stay down in my bunker with me. But it's just like, that's her master plan. This is what she wanted to happen the entire time. Genocide so she can just read a stupid book. And so after Homelander gets like V1, she gives completely up. To where she's all like, there's no stopping him now, blah, 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 blah. He knows I betrayed him, blah, 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 blah. And so she literally just gives up while they're trying to come up with a new solution to kill Homelander and stuff. Then she does help a little bit to help with this new solution. And so to test it out, she has to enrage Kimiko. Kimiko blasts her, and now she no longer has her powers. She's no longer smart, and she just walks off talking about, I can finally have peace of mind and everything, because she no longer has that burden of like her powers. They took a very interesting character and just reduced her to basically nothing. Then there's the stuff with Ashley. I think she's like the vice president or something like that. She married the president, but she keeps like, you know, doing it with that religious soup and everything. And so a lot of people been wondering what's gonna happen to her. What kind of power is she gonna have? Because of like, you know, all the stuff she's been through in the last season, her pulling her hair out, her being terrified of Homelander and everything, and her taking Compound V. Like, what kind of power was she gonna have? Is it gonna be like a Medusa type thing because of the hair thing? No, it's literally a tumor on the back of her head that has her face, but like a jagged eye or whatever. and it's like her conscience, and it's also it can like read people's minds. It was just almost one of those things where it's just kind of like, that's what you do to her. Like, people, like, even though they hate Ashley because Ashley just falls in line with whatever goes on in Vault, and she does that because she's actually terrified of Homelander and stuff, so she has to fall in line even though she doesn't agree with him. But she also has a dominatrix like type side to her where she gets pleasure and power by dominating men in the bedroom and stuff. And the fact that she's been reduced to having a Jiminy Cricket in the back of her head was just kind of weird. Then there were times where like she didn't want to use her power, but they did try to redeem her at the very, very, very end, by turning on Homelander when everything was going crazy. Only for her to be all like, well, I'm not going to stick around and help y'all fight because she wants to live. And then she became president for like a day and got like impeached, which I'm glad she did get some kind of punishment because she's not innocent. You know what I'm saying? But at that same time, it's just kind of like, I was expecting more. The whole thing with like Black Noir made absolutely no sense because of course they killed the original one from last season, and so they came up with a new one who was actually played by the body double of like the original one and stuff. And so they just basically like, you just wondering like, how is this guy gonna be different? Like, but they literally tell him, we want you to act just like the original one. Don't say nothing and just act mysterious. But like, why? But we find out he just wants to act. And they could have built something up on that, but they put him in a weird feud with like the Deep. And so like, basically the Deep was just jealous of all like Black Noir's accomplishments with like acting and stuff like that. And the way he just died by getting like some of the jump on him and getting choked out just made absolutely no sense. You was really expecting this big blowout between these two, and it was just reduced to absolutely nothing. And this new Black Noir was a little bit more interesting than the last. The last one was kind of crazy and had like goofy cartoon characters talk to him and everything. And it's kind of like, okay, where's this feud between him and like, the Deep was gonna go? Like, you really was expecting fireworks, and it was just nothing. There was really no point even having his character there, honestly, if he wasn't really gonna do much, because they were both trying to one up each other. Like, and I still can't believe what happened to the Deep when he one up him and stuff. So the Deep is just a follower and everything. He will kiss Homelander's butt no matter what. Homelander could care less about him. But he think him and Homelander are like bros and this and that. He has one of those toxic podcasts and everything. And he's been battling it. And he's been going one up with like that of like Black Noir. And so, like I said before, he is jealous and everything of like his accomplishments and stuff. Well, when he found out Black Noir was gonna be like in this movie, he killed like the agent or producer dude with like his sea creatures. So the Black Noir decided, okay, I'm gonna swim down at the bottom of the ocean, I think dressed as like the Deep or whatever, and cause oil to spill out in the ocean and kill a bunch of sea creatures. Of course, the Deep is pitiful and can't save none of his fishes, and he's upset about that. Then there was like, I don't know, somebody drowning, and somebody's like, hey Deep, why don't you go and rescue that person? But of course he's not a real hero, so he just runs and cowers. Now what's weird is that we see literally somebody videotape him running away cowardly and everything and not saving the person who was drowning. I assume that this was going to lead to something. He was going to be blackmailed, or somebody was going to put this online and everybody going to see what a coward he is. And then, that will ruin him and everything. But no, nothing led up to that. So why show a person recording him? But then there was a funny scene where all the fish animals were all like, the sharks were like, hey man, jump in the water, like it feels great and everything. Played by Samuel L. Jackson. But of course, the fish people are pissed because they think he is the one who messed up the that tanker and made all the oil go everywhere. And, so he's scared now to go into like the ocean. But of course, his demise came because they finally settled that whole Annie storyline that just came out of nowhere this season, where he blames her for everything, like a typical toxic male can't take responsibility for his own actions because he tried to like assault her and everything. And so they fight it out, but she doesn't kill him. I think she blasts him into the ocean, and of course the fishes kill him. How the fishes were able to kill him is strange because he is literally a suit and they have super strong skin and everything. But, they ripped him like apart. Also, when he killed Black Noir, how the heck did he do that? Black Noir literally held his breath under the depths of the ocean, but got choked out by this dude. It's just like they just, can't think of nothing. Kind of like with Allfather and everything. Allfather, so the religious dude, he has an agenda. He could care less about the bad stuff that Homelander's doing as long as he gets what he wants out of the church. Huge number of disciples and everything, and being the one to lead his new congregation and stuff. He's been messing around with Ashley behind the scenes and everything. And so, and you see him at times look at certain people in Vault and just be all kind of like, you're acting kind of suspicious and everything. Like you think he's gonna follow up on that, but then he doesn't. And so basically he is starting to worry about Homelander because he's all like, look, if these people in the church don't believe in me, kill them and everything. But he gets his demise by having one of them sex toy ball things gagged in his mouth as he's about to use his power of persuasion in his sonic blast by Mother's Milk. And it was an interesting way he died, but it was just kind of like, why is Mother Milk the one to kill him? They have no beef, you know what I'm saying? So then there's Firecracker, a white supremacist who's super religious. And for the most part, she is supposed to portray how a lot of super religious people will turn a blind eye to politics, to the people they support, just so they can push whatever agenda they want and everything. And that's how she is. She questions that of Homelander calling himself God, but she won't do nothing to stop him and everything. And when her old youth pastor comes to her, be like, hey, we need help with this one soup. And he's causing chaos and everything. She's reluctant to help him. But when Homelander starts to feel that she's not part of his vision, because he now sees himself as God, plus she's banging his father, and he doesn't like that because he doesn't like to share, he just straight up takes her head and sticks it through this needle pike looking thing. And I was expecting a little bit more from her. I was expecting her and Annie to duke it out, you know what I'm saying, because of what happened in season 4 when they showed Annie as a horrible person to what she did to this woman when the woman was younger and stuff. But, it's more of that rushness. Every time somebody has a storyline, it accumulates in that of one episode. Soulja Boy is basically just here to set up, Vault Rising. And so basically he's thawed out of ice, and he's just extremely disappointed in his son. Because his son is just so weird. And, he even accused his son, have you done any kind of incest stuff to me? Stuff like that. Because, Homelander is just so bizarre and everything. With, the breast milk and just all kind of other weird stuff. And so he just looks at his son as just almost kind of like a failure, but a failure who has, succeeded in life to take over, like, the government and stuff, and bend people to that of his will. And he literally constantly keep telling his son, like, I hate you and stuff like that. But he keeps saving him and rescuing him and preventing other people from killing him. And I don't get that. And he claims the reason for that is because of, like, Clara and stuff, Stormfront or whatever her name is. But like, who cares? You know what I'm saying? So I just feel like his role was just kind of odd, because I really wanted to see him turn against, like, his son and everything. But he constantly kept helping this dude, and he knows his son's a monster and has no business having powers, yet he gives him the V1 and stuff. So before I get into the last two people, let me get into what this season's actually about. So it's split into two storylines. The first storyline is like the virus that was cooked up with Gen V. So basically, they want to use the virus to kill the soups. Huey is kind of like, whoa, we can't do that. Like, not every soup is bad. And what about Annie and Kamiko? It will kill them as well and everything. And so, like, but Butcher and Mother's Milk's all like, look, man, we gotta do this, blah, 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 blah. We gotta get rid of these people and stuff. Or at least get rid of Homelander. So they try to perfect it and everything. The guy who created, like, the virus, who they kidnapped in season 4, he turns out to be the baby father of, like, the head popper lady and stuff, her child and stuff. And then once it's revealed, like, once it was revealed that Butcher is the one who killed head popper lady, they turn on the boys and try to destroy all the research on the virus, but they're still able to cook it up, but they have to test it out. So they're all like, hey, look, we gotta test it out on some strong soups, because how else are we gonna kill Homelander? So they find this one dude who looks like a volcano mountain, and they test it out on him, and it works and stuff, right? So then they test it out on Soldier Boy, and we think he's dead. I'm like, wow, that would have been a nice conclusion to Soldier Boy, killing him off with the virus. But no, he survived, like, in the next episode. Apparently, if you have V1 in your system, it will not do nothing to you. It'll just, like, stop your heart for a while, but then you'll come back. Or it'll just put you in a coma or something. So they're all like, crap. If the virus is not going to work on V1 people, we need V1. We get V1, get it out of the hands of Homelander, and possibly give it to Kamiko or, like, Annie and stuff. So then that's where the second part of the story comes from. So now we follow the boys as they're trying to find V1, but it's impossible. Pretty much all of it has been destroyed and everything. So Homelander, of course, wants V1 as well. And Soldier Boy wants him to have it, even though Soldier Boy does not like him. And that's another thing that doesn't make no sense, is Soldier Boy really hates his son. He thinks he's weird. He thinks he's just bizarre. But he's all like, I'm doing this for you because of your mother. I think Clara is her name or something like that. No, not the mother. Whoever Stormfront was. Whatever her real name was. He's doing it for her. He's all like, she would have wanted him to have this. Why? That's not even his first love or whatever. And I think he was in love with Laurie Holder's character from back in the day. But then there's that whole thing between him and Bomb Sight, and it's just like, you know what? I don't understand this show no more. Plus, if Stormfront really wanted this to happen, why did she off herself at the beginning of season 3? She could have stayed with him, but she saw how crazy he was and stuff. Anyways, so everybody's on a hunt for, like, V1, but this one rich guy has it. And of course, Jensen Ackles gets to reunite with his Supernatural co-star. And so, they're trying their best to get their hands on it, but he tells them, I think, what is it, Bomb Sight's the only person who has it. So they have to find Bomb Sight, but he's impossible to find. But they realize that they put his lover in danger, then he will come and rescue her. And so Sage had that plan and stuff. So that's what they do. And of course, here comes Bomb Sight, and of course, here comes Homelander, and here comes Soldier Boy. And so it's Soldier Boy who has the power of a nuke and can get rid of a Soup's power. And he literally tells him, hey, look, man, I'll make you like mortal again. You just give me the V1 and that and stuff like that, right? Now, of course, here's the weird thing about Soldier Boy's nuke power. That has to be retconned because I don't remember it being that way in season 3. Because we've seen him blast people with that and nobody lost their powers and stuff. But they had to retcon it because they had to find a way to get rid of, Homelander. But he gives him the V1 and he gives it to that of Homelander. Only for Homelander to get pissed at his father and put him back on ice. And so now they have to figure out a way to get rid of Homelander's, powers. At some point in time, the boys went to this old facility, I think a vault, where they was experimenting on Soups. And Soldier Boy literally said they would put them in these rooms with radiation, and Butcher was just kind of spying on it, seeing that it can affect that of what's his name, Homelander and stuff. And he nearly dies. Now that facility, something was leaking out because there's a Soup down there who's setting off all this neural energy, who's causing the boys to turn on themselves and try to kill each other. But anyways, so now the end game is to recreate Soldier Boy's power and give it to Kimiko because she has durability and everything. So in a matter of days, or if not a week, they're trying to recreate this super soldier experiment and everything. But apparently this power was given to Soldier Boy. It wasn't part of his power, which I thought was part of his power in season 3, but whatever, And so, of course, Homelander, and this is a weird thing when Homelander now has V1 in his system. What exactly did it do to him other than make him immortal? It didn't increase his power, because his power is exactly the same as it's always been. It didn't make him more angry or nothing. So what exactly does it do to people? I don't get it. You think it would have increased his power or something. And so, this is, of course, when we have, Sister Sage, Kimiko, and Frenchie down in their hideout, and Homelander is looking for them. And so Kimiko and that of Sister Sage, they hide in a little storage in the hole in the wall type thing, which it has something lined with something so Homelander can't see with his X-ray vision. And so once he noticed he can't see through that little compartment, he should have known somebody was hiding there. But Frenchie did the ultimate sacrifice. He didn't want them to get hurt. So he made noise so Homelander will find him. And he gives him a speech talking about how you will never know love, and I bet you've never danced with somebody you cared with before, and this and that. And of course, when we see Frenchie again, he is dead. And Kimiko loses it and everything to the point where she just no longer really wants to help out with that of the group. This is when Sister Sage has to egg her on to use her power and stuff. Okay, so Butcher and everything. Butcher, they have retconned his tentacles. He had cancer because the compound V caused like cancer in his body and caused it to cause tentacles and this and that. He has hallucinations and stuff. And this one dude who's his old like recruiting partner, buddy, or military friend or whatever, has been nothing more but a hallucination this entire time. So I'm expecting Butcher to just like, have the tentacles do whatever they want and take over his mind. But no, they no longer take over his mind. He goes and kills his father. He eggs on Ryan. And then there's that one episode where it's like a point of view episode where his dog almost dies. And Huey has to save him because the dog ate chocolate and dogs are not supposed to eat chocolate. So, because Butcher was all about, genocide, the soups and everything. Well, Huey's all like, nah, man, we can't do that. So his dog gets sick. And then Huey has to be the one to save it. And then he realized, all right, fine, we'll come up with another plan. So we won't have to kill Kimiko and Annie too and stuff. And so I do like the idea of Butcher constantly creeping around, spying on people, this and that. Being a very selfish person to see, will this work? Will this not? Then going to the next plan. And so he even has Mother's Milk and Annie pump the sprinkler system at Vault with the virus for a plan C, D, or whatever plan they had this time, And so but one thing that doesn't make no sense is when we finally get that final battle and everything, it's just him and Ryan fighting Homelander in the White House. There's no big soup fight because there's no budget and stuff like that. Everybody's doing their own little thing. Then, of course, when Kimiko comes in and she blasts everybody in the room, everybody's power is gone except for hers. So Homelander and stuff, no longer has his powers and this and that. After Butcher kills Homelander, he goes back to his place to celebrate with everybody else, but then Ryan rejects him, and that really hurts his feelings. Then he's all like, well, if I ain't got Ryan, at least I still have my dog. But his dog died and everything. So this causes him to leave, go back to the White House or Vault or somewhere, and it's going to activate the virus. Huey shows up. And he figured Huey would, follow him. Now, when those two got captured by some Vault members and everything, some soups, they exposed Butcher's past to Huey, talking about this man would do whatever it takes and kill whoever it takes just to get his means and everything. He let his entire squadron die in the military just because he went after this one person. And so Huey knows that Butcher still wants to kill every suit. This will literally kill Kimiko and Annie and this and that. And so he literally points the gun at Huey. I think they fight maybe a little bit, but he's all like, look, man, I'm still gonna detonate this virus and everything. And Huey is trying his best to talk him down. Butcher wants him to kill him and everything, but Butcher finally listens to what Huey has to say and takes his hand off the detonator button. But Huey still shoots anyway and kills him. And I was like, oh my God, why did they do this? He took his hand off the detonator and stuff. This is different from the comic, so why not let Butcher live, And they give him a funeral, but Ryan's there at the funeral. Why? Ryan doesn't want nothing to do with him no more. You know what I'm saying? And so Butcher just died. And I couldn't believe Butcher died. I did not want Butcher to die. Yes, Butcher has some unconventional ways, but he sees soups for who they are. Horrible people who care less about mankind and just harm them. Now, this is completely different from the comic. In the comic, of course, Black Noir clone was like no, I'm messing this up. Homelander clone was Black Noir, and Black Noir is the one who did all this horrible stuff, and Butcher assumed it was Homelander. And so Homelander goes kind of crazy. No. Homelander is just kind of like, whoa, like I've been telling you I ain't did this and did that and blah, 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 blah. But anyway, Black Noir, clone dude, goes insane in the head. There's a huge suit battle. Butcher runs outside, gets like a Gatling gun, starts shooting up the White House and everything. But then once Homelander or clone dude, whatever, is finally dead, Butcher realizes that, you know what, I have to kill everybody and stuff. Because in the boys comic, people always shoot up with like Compound V. So they can get one up on like the suits. In the show, you don't see that. But they're constantly injecting themselves in like the comics. Cause how else are they gonna take on the suits, And so he just starts about to kind of go. I think he kills everybody in the boys except for Huey, because Huey had to kill him and everything. But they didn't have to stick to the comics since they've changed so much. Homelander has lost it in this season, but not the way people wanted him to. He is one of the best villains being created in many decades and everything, and he's a very complex person. Now, a lot of people had a problem with him cowering and acting like a baby. I say that is spot on to who this man really is. Homelander is a coward. Homelander cannot fight. Homelander relies on his powers, and he's one of the strongest suits in all of existence. And so because of that, that gives him his the courage to do things that he does and all the nasty stuff that he does. You take that away and you have a coward and everything. So this whole season, he has been a dictator, wanting people to drink breast milk and everything. Thinking of himself as a god of all people and stuff. Wanting statues built in his honor, having a church built in his name. Those who do not convert to him must die and everything. And anybody who questions him must die as well. And so, like, he literally assassinated the president. He controls all of America. And his followers still follow him because they don't know a lot of the stuff that he's been doing, because he lies about a lot of stuff. Even when the 9/11 like video came out of him in that plane with I forget that lady supposed to be like super Wonder Woman and everything. They believed it at first until he's all like, oh, that's just AI. You know what I'm saying? And of course they believed him. And so, like, the big battle between him and Butcher and Ryan, it was okay. It could have been better. You know what I'm saying? It would have been nice to have more soups there and everything. But, of course, Kimiko blasts him. Now, he is a person who has been trying to restore his family. Like, his father does not love him, but he can't kill his father because he loves his father, so he'll put him back on ice. He beat the snot rockets out of Ryan, but did not kill him because he just can't bring himself to it. And so, like, but he can bring himself to kill A-Train and everything. And so, like, and also Firecracker. So, when Kimiko blasts him and everything, he no longer has his powers. And I knew exactly he was going to do what he did. He cowered like a coward and everything. He begged for his life and everything. And, it was expected. But of course, people wanted him to go out with guns ablazing and everything and be more evil. But you got to remember who this man is just a literal coward. So, of course, Butcher beats the snot rockets out of him with a crowbar and then shoves it through like his brain. But Butcher had no more powers, and he was able to bust open Homelander's head with a crowbar. How? He has no powers now. Now, in the comic, it's Black Noir who kills Homelander. Or is it Homelander that kills Black Noir clone? I get confused because it's the comics and stuff like that. And so, of course, everybody goes like their separate ways. This one dude wants to recruit Huey, be all like, look, man, the fight's still not over. There are still soups. But Huey's all like, nah, I'm with my wife and everything. She's pregnant. We own like a store and everything. And so, we see Annie still doing what she wanted to do in season one, be a superhero and everything. And so she flies off. Now, one thing that don't make no sense is how are these supes able to have babies? I assume Homelander was the anomaly. He was the special one. He was the first supe to be born from that of another supe and everything. Soldier Boy, because no other supe can apparently have kids. But we have seen in Gen V and even in the boys that other supes can have offspring and everything. So why they say that many years ago, I will never understand. So what do I think of season 5 of The Boys? It is not perfect. It's not as great as season 1 or 2, but it's a heck of a lot better than season 4. I think it's just okay with the story in which they wanted to tell. Like, you gotta keep in mind, their budget got slashed in half. Um, and like a lot of storylines had to get rushed and stuff. Plus, they were so concerned about creating that Vault Rising spinoff and stuff. And there's still no telling about the Mexican show that they want to create. Not only that, but it was just a huge shocker when Gen V came to an end all of a sudden. It's like Gen V gets canceled before season 5 comes out. And so you think you're going to get a resolution to those characters and you never do. Only for Crypt to be all like, oh yeah, you could see Gen V people in the future in some capacity. We ain't going to see them no more. Like, what they going to do? Pop up in Mexico or something like that and interact with whatever character is going to be created for that show? They can't be in Vault Rising because that's a prequel set in like World War II times and stuff. And personally, I don't want to watch Vault Rising. I don't want to see Stormfront Hitler loving behind. Don't get me wrong, the actress is amazing and everything, and she played that character well, but why the heck would I want to see that for, And why do I now want to get introduced to a bunch of new characters that literally got crammed all into one episode, like Bomb Sight and all these other people and stuff? Like, I really don't want to see it. I might check out the first episode just to see what it's like, but that's about it. You know what I'm saying? And so it is a shame that the series had to end the way it did because of studio interference and stuff. Not only studio interference, but not a true clear vision of how to make this season memorable and like impactful. Kripke did the best he could, but he had too much on the plate, way too many spinoffs and everything, and couldn't focus on what really needed to matter. A big blowout that fans just wanted to see. Fans just wanted scorched earth. They wanted soup versus soup. They wanted a huge battle and everything. And sadly, we could not get it. And if they couldn't give us that, they should have gave us the virus. And if they couldn't give us that, then they should have gave us the Gen V people to help out. Why set them up the way they did in their show, only to do absolutely nothing this season? So sadly, it had to end on that of a whimper. Will I buy it on DVD? Maybe. I mean, I only own season 1 and 2. And it would be nice to have a conclusion to that of the series and everything, even though the series wasn't as great as everybody hoped. I like it, I just don't love it. You know what I'm saying? I can accept it for what it is, but we deserve better. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.